Touchdown, Alabama, let's get it.
The process, no one can stop this. Hottest show in the streets, I bet you can't top this. Rammer, jammer, yellow hammer, come see how we rock this. Alabama fans, the best, there's no way you can top this. Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
Recruiting news and interviews, just sit back and watch this.
The process.
Welcome into The Process, Crimson Tide Recruiting. I'm your host, Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting and Managing Editor here at Touchdown Alabama. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube channel. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well so you can stay updated on everything Alabama football and everything Alabama football recruiting. So please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell right after so you can be notified when we drop content on our YouTube channel. If you are already a loyal subscriber to Touchdown Alabama, be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified as well. On this episode of The Process, I want to take a look at the Crimson Tide's 5-star targets. Of course, the Crimson Tide are going to recruit the best prospects in each recruiting class. The 2026 class will be no different. So I'll talk about the 2026 recruits who are 5-star prospects who the Crimson Tide are in play for at the moment. Of course, recruiting is fluent, so some guys we talk about today may not be 5-star recruits in the future, or maybe vice versa. Some guys who we do not talk about on today could possibly become a 5-star recruit in the future across multiple recruiting services. I would note, because you guys know there are multiple major recruiting services, and the guy may be rated as a 5-star on one and may not be rated as a 5-star on the other one. So today we're going to take a look at 5-star prospects who are rated as 5-star recruits on at least 2 different recruiting sites. And these are, like I said, these are guys who the Crimson Tide are in play for. And on today's show, we're going to start off by talking about Sendarian Morgan, the 2026 5-star wide receiver out of Benjamin Russell High School in Alabama. So he's an in-state target for the Crimson Tide. You're talking about a 6'5" wide receiver who can do it all. Had an opportunity to see him in Florida in the summer at the Future Filthy event, where some of the top 2026 prospects were in attendance. And he wasn't attention getter the moment that you saw him because of his length, because of how smooth he looked, and just his size at 6'5". It's hard to miss a guy who's that big, who's that fluent as route running. And that's one of the things that really stood out to Kalen DeBoer when he offered Sendarian Morgan probably a month or so before we actually got a chance to see him at this particular camp. And Kalen DeBoer told Morgan that there was not a 2026 wide receiver who looked quite like him, saying that he feels he could very well be the best wide receiver in the 2026 class. The Crimson Tide's entire offensive staff recently visited Morgan, talking about Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, the Crimson Tide running backs coach Robert Gillespie, Courtney Morgan, the Crimson Tide general manager. Basically, the entire Alabama offensive staff visited Morgan at Benjamin Russell High School very, very recently, showing him that he is a priority target for them. I expect the Crimson Tide to be in this one for a very, very long time and throw everything, including the kitchen sink, when it comes to going after Sendarian Morgan, because he's just that talented. Talking about a great route runner, a kid who can create separation with his route running ability, and also can make plays after the catch at that size. He's an in-state kid. You have to put everything behind possibly getting him on campus of the University of Alabama in the future as a player. So the Crimson Tide are going to continue to recruit Morgan, like I said, 5-star target. Definitely one of the Crimson Tide's top overall targets in this 2026 class. Another top target for the Crimson Tide, we're going to stay in state. We're talking about a guy from St. Paul's Episcopal High School in Mobile, Alabama. The Crimson Tide, of course, have had a lot of success when it comes to recruiting St. Paul kids. That school was very pivotal in the Crimson Tide's early days, picking up guys like Mark Barron, A.J. McCarron coming from that program. Anthony Jones just continues that tradition of that program producing top talent. And Jones is easily one of the top edge prospects in the 2026 recruiting class. Physical, strong, huge guy in terms of his frame. This film is actually when he was in, I think about 9th grade, I had an opportunity to go to St. Paul. So it was a couple of years ago, this film. He doesn't look like your typical 9th or 10th grader in his film. This was during the spring. So he looks even bigger now when he's heading into his senior season at St. Paul. The Crimson Tide have been recruiting him very heavily. I would say probably a couple of days after Kane Womack and Kalen DeBoer got to Tuscaloosa, they made sure they took the trip to St. Paul to check on Anthony Jones, because he's that valuable in terms of what he brings to the table, in terms of his physicality, in terms of his strength, athleticism as well. It's used on the offensive side of football for St. Paul. He plays tight end, he plays wide receiver. They use him all over the football field. So he remains a top target for the Crimson Tide. So basically kicking off this video by talking about 2 5-star in-state targets who the Crimson Tide are in a very good position for at the moment, but there is a long way to go. I probably would say the Crimson Tide are in a little bit of a better position with Anthony Jones, but there's so much time to go. They're going to have to continue to recruit these guys if they want to land some of the top talent in the state when they're going to be going up against some of the top programs in the country when it comes to going after guys like Anthony Jones and also Darian Morgan. So we're going to move a state over to talk about the next guy. We're going to talk about 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys, a guy who we have talked about on multiple previous episodes of the process because he is a 5-star recruit the Crimson Tide are going after. I always talk about this guy's playmaking ability as a wide receiver, 6'3", 185 pounds. Just looks like the wide receivers we see making plays on Sundays. Guys like the CD Lambs, the Justin Jefferson. He has that type of frame in terms of those lengthy guys who are not the biggest guys. Devontae Smith, you put Ryan Williams into that type of conversation as well. Guys who are just not the biggest guys at that wide receiver position, but showing that size doesn't always matter, especially when it comes to that particular position on the football field. Tristan Keys plans to officially visit the Crimson Tide during the summer. I had an opportunity to catch up with him. He talked a lot about the Crimson Tide and their ability to produce great wide receivers, saying they produce a lot of great wide receivers, and there's a lot of schools who claim to be wide receiver U, but I feel like Alabama is definitely one of them. They have produced a lot of first-round wide receivers. Of course, we know the Crimson Tide's production at the wide receiver position is second to none. Just take a look on Sundays. You see Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, you see Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper continuing to make plays. So the Crimson Tide's success in developing wide receivers is not lost on Tristan Keys. Like I said, the Crimson Tide are definitely in the running for the Mississippi 5-star wide receiver. They will host him for an official visit during the summer. Brandon Arrington is next up. Similar to Tristan Keys, we've talked about him multiple times on the process as well. Probably every episode since we've got to show back rolling for you guys on our YouTube channel. Similar to Keys, very similar to Keys. But Brandon Arrington is a 6'3" long athlete prospect who is going to be recruited by the Crimson Tide, continues to be recruited by the Crimson Tide at the defensive back position. And like I've said in previous discussions and breakdowns and updates about Brandon Arrington, I think the Crimson Tide are arguably in the driver's seat for the 5-star athlete out of Mount Miguel High School in California. The Crimson Tide like him at defensive back. The Crimson Tide secondary coach Maurice Lindquist is playing a huge role in the Crimson Tide staying very active. With Arrington can make plays as a kick returner as well with that type of speed that he possesses, has that 10-2-7 100-meter dash speed. So he's an elite sprinter on the track, and he used that athleticism, that explosiveness, that speed in the transitions over to the football field when you see him make plays in the kick return game, and also taking interceptions back to the house. Length, great as a cornerback. That's what everybody is going for at that cornerback position because it's paying dividends not only at the collegiate level, but in the NFL. You see guys like Pat Surtain, of course, who's a product of the University of Alabama, making plays on Sunday and winning Defensive Player of the Year. So schools across the country want guys like Brandon Arrington to play defensive back for them. Crimson Tide in a really, really strong position with Arrington. Long way to go. Like I'm going to say with probably a lot of guys here on today's episode, but the Crimson Tide are very much in a really, really good position with Arrington. Jared Curtis is the 5-star quarterback who's currently uncommitted at the moment. The Crimson Tide are in the best position with. Of course, the challenge you have at the quarterback position in recruiting it always is a bit difficult to sign a top quarterback after you sign a top quarterback in the previous recruiting class. And everyone knows the type of attention and the type of respect that Keelan Russell has earned as a prospect, as a 5-star recruit, as some recruiting services calling him the best prospect the Crimson Tide have ever signed in terms of his rating. So the expectations are high for Russell. And like we see that, quarterback prospects see that as well. So I do think the Crimson Tide are presented with that challenge, but we've seen other teams sign top quarterback recruits a year after signing another top quarterback. We'll see if the Crimson Tide are able to do it in this 2026 recruiting class. But Curtis seems to be a top target for Alabama. The moment he decommitted from Georgia, he put out that Alabama was a school that he was considering. Alabama's coaching staff, Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer, have made a trip recently to Nashville, Tennessee to check on the 5-star recruit. He missed his entire junior season with an injury, so we're going to get an opportunity to see Curtis back in action during his senior season in Nashville, Tennessee. In terms of his game, in terms of what we at least have seen in the past when it comes to Jared Curtis, is his ability just to make a variety of throws while standing up in the pocket and being able to escape pressure. You've just seen some of the things that he's been able to flash without him being able to, like I said, play that entire junior season. You just see him make a wide range of throws, and that's probably the thing that stands out the most about Curtis. I don't think he's the most explosive and athletic kid. I don't think he plays against the best talent as well in Nashville, Tennessee, but he is, with his ability to throw the football and just his accuracy, makes him at least be considered one of the top quarterbacks in the 2026 recruiting class, and Alabama seems to be really, really interested in him. The challenge still remains when it comes to that quarterback position. We will see how it will impact the Crimson Tide's 2026 quarterback efforts. I broke down the Crimson Tide possibly going after another quarterback in this 2026 class in a recent article on touchdownalabama.com. Be sure to check out that article. But I basically talked about, one of the things I talked about basically close the article was that the Crimson Tide's quarterback in this 2026 class may be a guy who doesn't have an offer from the Tide just yet. By this time last year, Russell did not have an offer from Alabama. I think that could be very likely during this recruiting cycle as well, simply because I think Russell being in Tuscaloosa, I think that plays a role in the Crimson Tide's 2026 quarterback recruiting efforts, which it should, just based on how talented Russell is. But something else I would keep in mind when it comes to the Crimson Tide recruiting the quarterback position, I think that quarterback battle, how it plays out, will also play a significant role in the Crimson Tide recruiting this 2026 quarterback group. Because if a guy like Ty Simpson wins, and Ty technically can stay in Tuscaloosa a couple more years technically, and you got Mac and you got Russell, playing time I guess is a bit harder to navigate. But if Russell wins the quarterback battle and Mac possibly thinks about transferring, and we're not sure what happens with Simpson at that particular point in time, and it'd be a little easier to recruit a 2026 quarterback. But all of those will factor into the Crimson Tide's 2026 quarterback recruiting efforts. But Curtis is the Crimson Tide's 5-star quarterback target, who they are in the best position with at the moment in terms of those uncommitted quarterbacks in this 2026 recruiting class. Elbert Hill is another 5-star defensive back who the Crimson Tide are going to be going after here in this 2026 recruiting class. He will get back to Tuscaloosa during the spring. Does not have a date set in, but he does plan to get back to Tuscaloosa during the spring. He is a product of Ohio, so we know Ohio State is going to be very, very instrumental in Elbert Hill's recruitment, just based on their ability to recruit defensive backs. You know they're going to want to keep an Ohio kid home, and it's simple as that. So the Crimson Tide have that working against them, but Hill is high on the Crimson Tide, basically saying they stand pretty high in my recruitment when I got an opportunity to talk with them after Alabama's coaching staff visited him in Ohio. So Alabama is really high on him. He said he's high on the Crimson Tide. We'll see how things work out. Hill is an explosive athlete. Looks like he's on a whole different level than the guys he's playing at the high school football level. He is really good at the defensive back position. We got to get you guys more defensive back film, but because we've got a lot of this wide receiver kick return film, but it is a good example of his athleticism and his speed, which when you're evaluating a guy who's going to be a defensive back and a cornerback in Elbert Hill's situation, you know that he has the speed. He's going to be able to use that speed on the defensive side of the football as well. But when we incorporate his defensive highlights, you guys will see that he can make plays on both sides of the football. Really good ball skills go along with that speed and athleticism. Now we're going to go to the offensive line and in the trenches, and we're going to go to an absolute game changer on the offensive line. We're talking about 5-star offensive lineman, Emmanuel Iheanacho. Physical, mean, strong, 6'7", 300 pounds. He moves really well for that size, but he's dominant in the trenches. Very strong punch, a lot of strength. With that type of size at the high school football level, he's just bullying in those kids at that size and the way that he plays. Would you like that? You like to see that nastiness. One of the first things that you see pop out when you turn on Iheanacho's film. You also see him working down the field, being able to work down the field, work in the second level. You see him continuing to block until the whistle is blown. So you like to see that out of an offensive lineman as well. His ability and his willingness to continue to work to go along with that straight dominance when it comes to him as an offensive lineman. And at that size, it's going to be hard to stop him from pushing you out the way and basically destroying defensive linemen at the high school football level, keeping his feet moving, staying engaging, plays offensive tackle for his current high school. It'll be interesting to see what he will play at the next level at that size. I think he can be a tackle, but to be honest, he's going to have position versatility. 5-star offensive lineman for a reason. Alabama is in the mix with him. His recruitment is very open in terms of his top school list. Recently dropped it. I think it was around like a top 10 plus. So there's multiple schools in the running for Emmanuel, but the Crimson Tide are one of those programs. They have hosted them in the past under Kalen DeBoer in their coaching staff. So they seem to be in a really good position with Iheanacho at the moment, but everybody is going to throw a lot at this kid when it comes to recruiting him. Of course, we know in this NIL era, pretty sure he's going to get a nice NIL package. A lot of those offers are going to head his way, and deservedly so, because of what he's been able to show so far at the high school football level. But at the moment, the Crimson Tide are in the running for the 5-star offensive lineman, along with 5-star running back Derek Cooper, who actually visited the Crimson Tide during the season. He was actually kind of blown away by that visit, telling me that when he came in and talked to Kalen DeBoer, they had his film on screen, basically showing him that they like his game, showing him multiple reasons why they like his game and how he could fit in Tuscaloosa. So he felt really good after getting the opportunity to talk with Kalen DeBoer and that multiple members of Alabama staff. They actually visited him recently as well, continuing to show a lot of interest in him. The last time I talked to him was at the Under Armour All-American game, just telling me that his contact with the Crimson Tide was frequently consistent at that particular point in time, saying he feels like he talks to those coaches every single day. He can basically be saying at that time that he feels that Alabama really wants him in this 2026 recruiting class. He's a product of Florida, 6'1", 200 pounds, explosive running back, PR of 10.7, 100-meter dash, has flash and ability to be effective in both the run and pass game out of Florida, Hollywood, Florida, one of the top high schools in the state at Chaminade, Madonna. So the Crimson Tide are at least at this moment in the mix with Derek Cooper. Like I said, the thing that stands out to me, because I've seen him in action multiple times. One time was at that Future Filth event that I saw Cedarian Morgan in over the summer. Another time was at the Under Armour All-American game and practices, because he was one of those 2026 recruits who had an opportunity to participate in the game. One of the things that stood out at both of those events was his ability to catch the football out of the backfield. He actually plays on both sides of the football, which is really, really interesting when you're playing in Florida for one of the best programs and you're a running back. You typically don't see that. You typically don't see a guy playing on both sides of the football. So I think that says a lot about Derek Cooper's athleticism and the way that he can play the game of football. He's looking at a football player. I'm a guy who's able to do multiple things on both sides of the football. But that is what I want to talk about on this episode of The Process, highlight some guys who the Crimson Tide are going after in the 2026 recruiting class who are 5-star prospects. Like I said earlier, these guys maybe 5-star recruits on multiple recruiting sites today. They may not be 5-star recruits in the future. And guys who we did not talk about on today's episode may be 5-star recruits on multiple recruiting sites in the future. But these are guys, like I said at the beginning of the show, who are rated as 5-star recruits, at least on 2 different major recruiting services. So I want to highlight them and talk about the 5-star prospects who the Crimson Tide are in play for at the moment. In another video, I'm going to take a look at the Crimson Tide's 3-star targets, the guys who are not rated on multiple recruiting sites at the moment, and why the Crimson Tide are prioritizing these guys, because some of these prospects are prospects who've basically flown under the radar, at least to this point in time. And I'm pretty sure they're going to be 4-star, 5-star, possibly 3-star recruits in the future once they get their ranking. But I do want to talk about that in a future video. But they will do it for this episode of The Process. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on our YouTube channel. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well. Subscribe and hit that notification bell. Be notified and drop content on our YouTube channel. As always, I am Justin Smith, the Director of Recruiting and Managing Editor here at Touchdown Alabama.
Process.